as I'm working with these companies, these startup innovative companies, the one thing that they talk to me about is we can't find and hire enough engineers to bring these ideas to life. So yesterday, you heard from Florence Verzelen about our initiatives around workforce of the future, but I'm gonna bring up a distinguished panel that are gonna dive much more deeply into the topic. But before I do that, I just wanna highlight an announcement we just made this morning. The press release just went out. One of our panelists from UMass Lowell has been working with Al Bunshaft, our VP of Global Affairs in Academia, and they have created a 3D experience center and are going to expand the capabilities and our joint partnership at UMass Lowell. So I just want to take a minute and congratulate Joe and Al on this fantastic accomplishment. They'll tell you more about it. So without further ado, let me bring up Al Bunshaft, and Al will introduce the panel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dean. Great. I don't know if you folks saw the Wall Street Journal this morning. I did over my cup of coffee. We didn't arrange this, but right on the front page, retirees grow, workforce shrinks in strain for U.S. Front page of today's paper. So it's, we've been talking about this for many years now, this growing gap of skills and talent that we have in our industry across a range of industry, and I think it's really coming to roost now, and we're seeing it. I mean, for the first time in my over 30 years working in this industry, working with our clients, when we show up and we want to talk about our solutions, our products, their business problems, they want to talk about this issue. Is what are you doing to help us regarding the skills we need to drive our business? So we have on the panel today 4 leaders of organizations that are making a difference when it comes to impacting the STEM talent gap. Just last month, a report was released by STEM Connector, and it broke it down really into 5 gaps. They said there isn't really one gap, there are 5 major issues we have to attack. Fundamental skills, belief, post-secondary education, geographic gap, and demographic gap. And I think, in our businesses, I know that we see all of those, and I know that these gentlemen here on stage are doing something about it. So today, on this great panel, we have Dean Gregory Washington. Dean Washington is Dean of the Henry Samueli School of Engineering at the University of California, Irvine. Next to him is Dean Joseph Hartman, Dean of the Francis College of Engineering at UMass Lowell. Next to him is Mr. Landon Taylor. Landon is the CEO of BaseEleven. And last but not least is Charles Marsh, Chief of Design Tools for Bell, and also a board member of the Community of Experts, CO. And we're going to hear from each of them about what they're doing to attack this issue. So we only have a few minutes. We're going to go kind of rapid fire here, and I know that I could spend a half hour, an hour with either of these gentlemen talking about this topic, but let's start with Greg. Greg, UC Irvine has grown dramatically. It's evolving significantly. It's changing. Talk a little bit about what you're doing, and especially what you're doing to partner with industry and change the dynamic around education at your school.
Well, thanks a lot, Al. Look, education as we know it is being disrupted as our economy and as our systems around us are being disrupted. And at UC Irvine, we took on the mantra very, very early of the concept that I call partner or perish. This whole idea of publish or perish was a big part of our academic institutions for years. Partnering is a different thing, and the reason why we have to partner is because what is being asked of our students today is far more than what was being asked of many of us in this room in our generation. The complexity, the speed of change, the complexity of the problems that the students have to deal with, the grand challenge issues that they have to deal with, and the global competition are all real. And so what we're doing at Irvine is we're doing 3 unique things. One is we're recognizing that we can't solve the problems by ourselves. There's no way in a 4-year academic framework we can give students everything they need to be successful and to be successful for you. And so one of the things we're doing is we're partnering with, we got somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 different core industry partners. And these are all names that you all have heard of. And we have 52 overall, but 15 are in depth with us, and they work closely with us. They hire our students for internships. Those internships work directly with correlating directly to our educational processes and the like. And that helps the students round out the education that we're giving them in the classroom. The second thing we're doing is we're attacking a much broader population, a much broader educated populace. Right now, at UC Irvine, we're the only school in the AAU that is what you call a HSI, it's a Hispanic Serving Institution. So I have more Latino students in my program than I have Caucasian students. And for a research-one institution, that's a significant thing. And then we're also impacting the rate in which we educate women. The number of women across the country is somewhere around 18% of our graduates in engineering are women. We're at 30%. And that number we're at 30% and that number is growing. And so we're making these entities more diverse by attacking the problem and engaging them in that way. So I'll stop there, but
We'll
a
talk
lot more
more
to talk about on this
We'll
subject.
talk more. Thank you, Joe. Great. Greg. Joe, I want to go to you next. And it's amazing what's happening at your school at UMass Lowell. Some of you may know we used to, before we were in Waltham, Mass, we were in Lowell, and the changes there are incredible. I've been there a few times in the last year. You're leading a transformation there, very much embracing the region and a lot of what's going on in New England here. Talk a little bit about what's happening with your school.
Thank you, Al. It has been very exciting up at UMass Lowell, probably for over the past decade, a complete transformation of the university, driven by our 2020 strategic plan to change the student experience. But just as importantly, we had to really change our infrastructure and our culture and our climate to bring that to life. And to give you a sense of the change of infrastructure, I think the Chancellor mentioned the other day, we've had 14 new buildings or renovated buildings opened in the last 5 years alone up at UMass Lowell. I mean, everything from unexciting things like parking garages and maybe dorms, but the exciting stuff is on the academic side. The Saab Emerging Technologies and Innovation Center, a new business school, a new university center, a new makerspace, all these new changes, and they're really brought about to change our student experience and really center on experiential learning. You know, the dorms might not be very exciting to a professor, but that gives us the opportunity to have living learning communities where students gather around a theme, and you can build programming, and studies show that helps retention and get them out of graduate sooner. Our new makerspace has allowed us to flourish with our Difference Maker program, where we instill innovation and entrepreneurship with all of our students, such that they can take an idea to a prototyping session. And what Dean mentioned earlier, that Dassault Experience Center now is just going to let us take that to the next level. You know, our university center houses a full staff now for a professional co-op program, such that we can prepare students to go out and have 3 and 6 months experiences in industry while they're still going to school, help pay for school, and bring those experiences back to the classroom. You know, and then on top of it all, without that space, we wouldn't be able to expand. We've offered new degrees now in biomedical engineering, in environmental engineering. We'll be hopefully launching a new industrial engineering program in the near future that'll focus on automation and manufacturing. You know, and lastly, it's allowed us to upgrade our research capacity, which grows our graduate programs, allows us to hire the greatest faculty around, and partner with other industries that we weren't able to do so before. Greg mentioned, you know, Raytheon set up shop on our campus because we upgraded our capacity. The U.S. Natick Army labs are on our campus every day working with our students. So it has been an exciting transformation to help power that workforce.
And we're excited to be part of it as well with you. Next, I want to turn to Landon. Landon, you and I have been working together for a couple of years now. We have some exciting things going on, but I suspect most people here haven't heard of BaseEleven. I think you're doing incredible work in many parts of the country, not only with us. Talk a little bit about your talent acceleration model and what you're doing to address some of these gaps that we talked about earlier.
Sure, good morning. BaseEleven is a nonprofit STEM workforce and entrepreneur development company. And we're out to solve two of our country's most significant problems. One is this growing STEM talent pipeline crisis that's only getting worse because of the underrepresentation of women and students from underserved communities. And number two is this lack of a sustainable middle class in America made up of all Americans. And so our approach is to solve both those problems by strategically integrating the stakeholders from industry, academia, philanthropy, and government around one goal, which is to engage what we call high potential, low resource students, and to transform them into the STEM trained talent that industry and our country so desperately needs. And our approach is to build these ecosystems that feature an innovation center, an MIT-inspired Fab Lab that's designed to empower students with the skills, the real world experience, skills, and mindset that they need to be prepared for what Bernard yesterday called the industrial renaissance of the 21st century. And when we come back, I'll give a key example of a project that's doing just that.
Great, thank you. And we've already seen the impact of what you're doing. As an example, last summer at UC Irvine, Landa's team ran the Autonomous Systems Engineering Academy, brought students in, had them work in teams on drone programs, and then we're going to hear next from a board member of Co. At Co, we invited students to join us at Co. We met one of those students, and she shared with us that when we met her, she was in community college, and as a result of going through that program, she had the skills and confidence, and she's now going to a 4-year engineering university in Michigan. So, I mean, real impact on real people and immediate impact. Chaz, thanks for joining us. You're with Bell, but you're also a board member at Co, our community of experts that represent all of our end users. Talk a little bit about, as the industry member here on this panel, what you see happening in your business and what industry sees happening with regards to this issue.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the board. From a company or industry perspective, there is a definite gap of skilled students coming out, entry-level students. And the partnership with Co is a member of industries, and it's a great place to collaborate. And this year, the first time we brought in about 75 students from local schools, and we flew in about 20 students from universities around the country. And we gave these students an opportunity to meet with the industry, see the technologies that are being presented in the technology center, and really give them an opportunity to interact and collaborate and present their student e-posters to the industry. So it's a good place to introduce the students to the industry leaders and exchange resumes and give them insight into those real world applications, solving mobility issues, solving health issues. And it really invigorates the students and us as an industry to get the hype up, right? Show the excitement of STEM, show the application. And so from a Bell perspective, we're also struggling to bring that knowledge base up. We're doing it through co-ops for 3 months or 6 months. We've got summer internship programs. We're bringing approximately 400 students annually through our doors, and that gives them a preview of what real world is, and it also gives us a preview of the skill sets that are out there, and it's an extended interview, and it's really a great source of providing those human resources with the skills and giving them just enough push to say, okay, this is where I'm going to focus. I'm going to focus on systems engineering. I'm going to focus on industrial engineering. It's
And we're going to come
It's a
back
win-win.
and talk a little bit more about how people can get involved with that. But so we see things like this addressing students' exposure, belief, inspiration to get involved in these fields. I want to come back to Greg. In addition to leading your university's engineering program, you're the chair of the Engineering Dean's Council for the American Society of Engineering Educators. So you have a perspective across what's going on in the entire United States through that community. Can you raise the level of discussion a little bit and talk about what is happening? You know, is what's happening at your school totally unique, or do you see this happening across the board? And you know, what should people here look for in their communities and their ecosystems that they work with?
Well, it's not unique. I will tell you, as engineering schools in general, we have increased the number of graduates over the last 10 years. We've increased the number of students over the last 10 years by over 350,000. And it's a huge growth in our engineering programs nationally. But we still know, and as was just highlighted, about 3 in every 4 global executives believe a lack of skills is the number one issue facing their industry. And I know that many of you may have these issues as well. So what are we doing overall to kind of combat that? There are 3 things that are happening. One is that there's an emphasis and a strong emphasis on experiential learning throughout the country. And what that means is we can't just teach students in a classroom anymore. They really have to get out and really solve problems. That's happening all over the place. You heard our folk here at UMass Lowell doing that. It's happening in many places. One of the ways this is manifesting itself is through what's called student competitions. And so you're seeing hundreds of these competitions percolate throughout the country. Elon Musk has a huge one with this Hyperloop Challenge. And what is this for? The reason for having these competitions is to introduce students to complexity, get them involved in designing complex problems and doing it at a very early age. Let me highlight something to you. What does Dell, Microsoft, Apple, EA Sports, Netscape, Google, Genentech, what do they all have in common? All of the founders were in their teens or 20s. And that was our generation. So for most of us, that means that we're really underachieving right now. But that's the expectation on our students today. And so the last area of emphasis is on entrepreneurship. And so all the programs across the country, many of them have really defined programs in entrepreneurship. The goal for many of our students, many of our graduates today, they would rather go work for a startup than go work for some of the large corporations that you and I all know and are household names. And that spirit in entrepreneurship, we think, will be not only great for our future as a country, but it'll also be great for being able to supply these students with opportunities as they move in a really globally competitive environment.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Joe, UMass is a state school, but you're here in New England, you're here in the Boston area where, you know, arguably we have a high concentration of some of the very best higher education institutions in our country and in the world. And yet, we have more employees from UMass Lowell maybe than almost any other school in the region, and I think that's true for a lot of companies. Talk about the role of the state school, and you've been at other state schools before in your career, the role of the state school as a regional supplier of talent for companies like ours and others.
Yeah, sure. I'm a state school kid. I grew up in Chicago. I went to Illinois.
By the way, I went to a New York State school. So
I went to Georgia Tech, and I've taught at both private and public schools, but before I came to UMass Lowell, I was teaching at the University of Florida. So I'm well aware of frankly, how we need these state schools to run our economies. You know, the interesting point for UMass Lowell, maybe this isn't a surprise if you're from here, but 85% of our student body comes from the region, from New England. And I don't know if it's, again, I'm from Chicago, sorry. I don't know if it's the Red Sox, I don't know if it's North Shore, I don't know if it's the Bruins or the Patriots, but most of them want to stay here. And so when they graduate, the stat I've seen from the system, from the UMass system, is 85% of our graduates stay in the Commonwealth or immediately in states next to it. So, when we're a large school, we have 4,000 engineers in the Francis College of Engineering, 3,000 at the undergraduate level. So when we graduate, I think we, in commencement, we had about a little over 800 degrees conferred at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level. When 85% of those stay in the region, they really are powering the economy. And you can't say that about all the privates. They tend to go and recruit all over the nation, and therefore a lot of those folks tend to go back often from where they came. So, and I think that's common at state schools across the country, and so we're really, it's important that we recognize that. And that's, you know, a little bit of a concern maybe going forward is the change in time with the state schools. You know, years ago, we throw out the old stat that 80% of the costs at the university were taken care of by the state. And if you look at most state schools now, it's really flipped. About 20% is taken care of by the state. And so that's a bit of a concern, is if we want to continue to grow, you know, we need the funding to be able to grow and meet those needs of the workforce. We know there's a shortage. Greg talked about it. We've doubled our undergraduate enrollment in about 7 years just at UMass Lowell. But if we want to continue to grow, we can't continue to put the burden on the students just through tuition. Let me just throw out one last stat to close up here. And this might shock you, but 32% of the students at UMass Lowell come from households with income of $30,000 or less. And when you think about that, if it isn't for the state schools, who's going to provide the opportunity for these students, which are clearly needed by industry, clearly needed by the region? And that's our role here, and we'll continue to provide that role, but it's important to know that that role needs to continue to be supported.
Terrific, thank you. So it's, I think, obvious how these gentlemen are educating, you know, future talent by the thousands. The last two comments that I want to talk about are leaders who are driving programs, I think, that are going to change the game and change the equation. And Landon, you just announced something, and I had the pleasure of joining you a couple weeks ago out on the West Coast. Why don't you talk about what BaseEleven is doing and how you're changing the game in the aerospace industry?
Absolutely. So Al mentioned earlier that we did the Autonomous Systems Engineering Academy, and we did that with Greg Washington was a partner with that, Dassault was. But now we want to take it to the next level. So we just announced 2 weeks ago the BaseEleven $1 million Space Challenge, which is an example of our commitment to provide university and high school and community college students with the experience that they need to be prepared, as I said before, for these new innovative jobs of the 21st century. Modeled after the Ansari X Prize, the BaseEleven Space Challenge will award a $1 million cash prize to the first university rocketry team in the US or Canada that can design, build, and launch a liquid fuel rocket that reaches an altitude of 100 kilometers, the edge of space, by December 30th, 2021. And there's milestone goals coming up to, leading up to that, and the first milestone is the program design, which includes the design of the rocket and outreach and safety plan. And thanks to the partnership with Dassault, all of the teams will have the Dassault Systems 3D Experience platform to design their rocket. And so we're excited about that. And so I want to share with you now, this last week, Al was there with me. Dean helped us to launch it amidst industry partners and community college partners and students, the launch video that we shared that got this launch. Please show the video.
Welcome to BaseEleven's $1 million Space Challenge. We're looking for the first university rocketry team who can build and launch a liquid fuel rocket that can reach an altitude of 100 kilometers, the edge of space. Space launches like SpaceX's Falcon Heavy have captivated our imaginations to dream of a new age in space travel. The opportunities are endless, but there's a huge problem. Several aerospace companies have told us that as much as 50% of their engineers will be eligible for retirement in the next 10 years. But graduates often have to spend their first 5 to 7 years getting their real-world training on the job before they can start adding value. The current model is just not working. That's why we've launched the BaseEleven Space Challenge, to empower hundreds of participating students nationally with the mindset and skills that are most in demand by employers of the 21st century, and to establish a strategic talent pipeline model, enabling industry, academia, philanthropy, and government to break down the silos and start working together to develop the talent we all need to succeed. So what can you do to help open up space as a new frontier for mankind? Are you a university faculty, administrator, or student, or leader in aerospace, tech, or philanthropy? Join us as a member of the Space Challenge.
Thank you, Landon. And I think you can see some of us have been partnering together before today. Terrific. Chaz, say a little bit more about the CoAcademic initiative and hopefully how some of the companies here can get involved with it.
Sure. So we've got the CoAcademic program, and really, Co is a volunteer organization. It's a not-for-profit. And one of the things to enable to spur that is we need corporate sponsors. So I've got a sponsor packet here, and Sari over in the corner is, right here, is also available. She's got some packets. So I would like to encourage you all to invest in Co, to join us. It's a community of experts in Dassault Systèmes solutions, and it's where we put the theory to practice, and these students have the opportunity to bring their innovative ideas to Co and put those theories really into practice.
Yeah, terrific. So if you're from a school, your students should be joining us. And if you're from industry, you should be getting involved. I mean, when we stood up in front of the audience, I remember at Co, and we told them about this initiative and that we had like 75 students here today at that conference in San Diego, which took place in April. We waved a little memory key in front of everyone and said, and here are their resumes. They're all juniors and seniors in engineering, and they're interested in your companies. And we intend to try to double that this year. So we're going to keep scaling this thing up. We can only do it with your involvement. So I want to thank these gentlemen for a terrific panel. I wish I had a lot more time to talk with you about the things you're doing. I encourage you to find these folks afterwards and ask them questions if you're interested in getting involved. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. Thank you.
Take care.
I really want to take a moment to commend Al Bunshaft and his team, because as you saw in the video, this panel and the topics that they discussed is really just, the tip of the iceberg for the work that this team has done to create these types of partnerships, as you see, with academic institutions from coast to coast, from California to Massachusetts, and also creating meaningful industry partnerships with BaseEleven and with employers like Bell, and you see with GE and others that are really making a difference. And there's a phrase that I know Landon likes to use, that we're not just talking the talk, but we're walking the walk to really make a difference. And another phrase Landon likes to use, landing positive outcomes, getting students into that golden circle, creating talent for you, the innovators that are going to really impact all of our lives as we go forward into the future. And so, this industry renaissance that we've been talking about really truly depends on, generating the workforce of the future. And when I hear statistics like 30% of, the student body is represented by women, and, we're really closing that gap, it just really inspires me and makes me feel like we're making a difference in the world.